Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you can see and or hear me, you are attending our California High-Speed Rail Authority informational session on the Burbank to Los Angeles project section as part of our outreach and communications efforts, as this document is available for public review, a draft environmental impact report, draft environmental impact statement. Thank you for joining us. My name is Genoveva Arellano, and I am a member of the outreach team of the California High-Speed Rail. We are here this evening to provide you information about the program and also very specifically about one of the grade separations near downtown Los Angeles at Main Street. So we are very thankful for you joining us and hope that our time together over the next 2 hours is helpful for you. The authority is offering today's informational session to focus specifically, as I mentioned, on the Main Street grade separation in Los Angeles. It is a part of the Burbank to Los Angeles project section. Grade separations, and there are 6 of them as part of this project, are major projects in and of themselves. So we're happy to be able to focus on this for you this evening and answer your questions directly. In a moment, I'll introduce our panelists that you see on screen, but I'd like to give you just a little bit more information for the moment. Please know that this public meeting is being held within the formal public comment period for the Burbank to LA project draft environmental impact report, environmental impact statement, public comment period, which started on Friday, May 29th and ends next Monday, August 30th, 2020. Your questions or comments provided to us today will not be considered as a formal comment. So today is an informational session only, Q&A, here to answer your questions and hopefully help inform you so that you can make a more informed formal comment as part of the public process. During today's session, I will be reviewing with you more information about the environmental document, which is now available, and how to formally comment on it and more. But before I continue on this project background and more instructions on how to participate on this Zoom call, I would like to have our presenters from the authority, who you can see online on your screen, at least most of them, introduce themselves, and then I'll proceed with providing you some additional information. So Diane, if you can be sure to unmute yourself, Bruce and Tyler. If you can, each of you, let's start with Bruce, if you can introduce yourself. And then I will take it back and proceed with some more information. Bruce.
My name is Bruce Armstead. I'm Director of Operations and Maintenance for the High-Speed Rail Authority. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. I had video earlier and I just don't understand why I don't have it now.
No worries. You sound great, Bruce. Thanks for leading us off. Diane.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Diane Ricard, and I'm the project manager for high-speed rail for Burbank to Los Angeles and Los Angeles to Anaheim project sections.
Awesome. And Tyler.
Hello, everybody. Tyler Bonstead here. I'm the consultant project manager leading the design and environmental clearance for the project.
Awesome. Welcome to each of you. We've been at quite a few meetings together, and this team, you're in very good hands to answer your questions today. During our questions and answer period, which will follow the presentation, we will also have some additional authority representatives who can participate answering your questions with specialties in right-of-way, other environmental specialties. So we want to make sure we have all the right hands on board to address your questions today. Again, we really appreciate you all joining us this evening virtually. Normally, the authority has these meetings in person plus a public webcast, but as you know, because of our unique pandemic, our work environment right now, all public meetings are being held online. So we're grateful for this technology and hope that you can follow along and get your information, get your questions answered. So our agenda for our time together, and we have until 8 o'clock this evening, will include a main presentation. This will review information about the project overall, and specifically information on the Main Street grade separation. What I'll do after the presentation is provide you a quick demonstration of a project website online that is available to you now. I hope many of you have already visited it. It's called meethsrsocal.org. I'll review that with you throughout tonight's meeting. If we have any downtime where we're waiting for folks to ask questions, I'm going to kind of walk you through that website to make sure you know how to retrieve information online and review the document and provide public comments. We have plenty of time for questions and answers. That is our priority this evening. So hopefully our session together will be informative and helpful to you. Please know this meeting is being recorded. However, again, your comments or questions as part of this meeting are not official public comments. I will be reviewing with you later in the meeting how to submit a formal comment. I would like for you to know that this meeting is also being broadcast simultaneously in Spanish and in Mandarin Chinese. So for your information, this audio can be heard, if you're interested, by calling separate numbers for our Spanish audience and also for our Mandarin Chinese audience. I'm going to review these phone numbers in English, and then I'll repeat it in Spanish and then have my colleague interpret it in Chinese in just a moment. So if anyone is interested in hearing the audio in Spanish, that Spanish phone number is area code 669-900-8, excuse me, let me repeat, 669-900-6833. And then you have to enter a passcode. That number is 834017. And for our Chinese audience, if anyone's interested in hearing that interpretation, I'll say the numbers in English, and then again, we'll interpret them in both English, Spanish, and Chinese. The Chinese number is 669-900-6833 with the passcode of 723740. So I'm going to repeat this in Spanish. Si ustedes prefieren escuchar esta presentación en español, tenemos un número de teléfono donde puede llamar para escuchar la presentación en español. El número es 669-900-6833 con el código, el número 834017. And now I would like to ask my colleague Derek to repeat that in Chinese for our Chinese speakers.
想要听中文的话，可以用电话号码669-900-6833，然后用密码723740。
Excellent. Thank you very much, Derek. So now I'd like to provide you some project background information that is helpful. I hope some of you have joined our meetings before, so some of this may be familiar with you, but just in case any of you are new to our meeting or our program, this information is good to know as overall background. So today's meeting is being held in connection with a very long anticipated release of the environmental document for the Burbank to Los Angeles project section. This has been in the planning stages for many years. You should know the state of California in 2005 adopted a program environmental document which covered the entire state of California and commenced the planning for the statewide high-speed rail network. In 2008, the state, we the voters, passed Proposition 1A, which began the allocation of state and federal, later federal funding for the program. That proceeded, and in 2014, the public scoping, the official public scoping for this section was completed. And it was also at that time that this was separated from the Palmdale to Los Angeles project section. At one point, that planning was one entire line between Palmdale and Los Angeles, and now those are two separate sections. So the Burbank to Los Angeles section is what we're reviewing specifically today. Since 2014, alternatives analysis have been completed by our technical team, and lots of public outreach has been done in earnest to let the public know about the planning of this project and the various alternatives that were being considered. As a result of this outreach and a lot of the technical work, the alternatives have evolved to where we are today. And now finally, as a result of that analysis and that information, we've been able to publicly release the draft environmental impact report and environmental impact statement, which is required by both state and federal law. Just to give you a quick chronology of where we are today, that document again was released on Friday, May 29th, as a 45-day public comment period to begin with. On June 4th, we had a legislative briefing with our legislative audience, and on June 9th, a meeting with our stakeholder working group, which actually has been meeting over the years to provide us input on ongoing alternatives and for us to provide them with an ongoing update of information surrounding the project. On June 18th, we had hosted an open house, a virtual open house. And on Monday, June 29th, we hosted a telephone town hall using normal telephone lines, allowing people to have a phone conversation with us about the project. On July 8th was our official public hearing, which was held virtually to receive formal public comments on the project. We then were able to extend the public comment period to July 16th, which was a 45-day period. And then again, it was extended. Actually, that was the original period. It was extended a second time to where we are now, where Monday, August 31st is our final deadline, which provides us a 94-day public comment period, a little over 3 months for folks to provide us their formal comments. We've been receiving many comments already, and we hope we receive more by next Monday. We added an additional telephone town hall last week to host folks, again, to have additional questions and make sure that the public is informed and understands what is being proposed as the project. During today's meeting, you will receive full project information about the overall program, this specific section, the process surrounding the environmental document, and specifics about the Main Street grade separation. All of the information that you will be receiving tonight is completely available to you online, and I will be reviewing that with you at the website meethsrsocal.org. Again, that's meethsrsocal.org. I'll be repeating this website a few times and reviewing it with you online, so we hope that that's helpful to you to know how to download the full document, get an executive summary of the document in English or 8 other languages, use our interactive map to request an appointment to speak to our staff, and more. So we hope that's useful to you. As I mentioned, the executive summary of the draft environmental impact report, environmental impact statement is available online. I recommend this document. It's a 74-page document, so it is short as it relates to the entire document and is a good read to understand the comprehensive overview of the project of what is being proposed. As I mentioned, it's also available in 8 other languages besides English, including Arabic, Armenian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. If you are interested in accessing a printed copy of the draft environmental document, it is available for you to review directly at the Caltrans District 7 headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. That address is 100 South Main Street, Los Angeles, here in California. The zip code is 90012. Printed and/or electric copies of the draft environmental document are also available for review during business hours at the authority's headquarters in Sacramento. If interested and needed, that address is 770 L Street, suite number 620 MS1. That's in Sacramento. And please note that the authority office may have reduced open days and hours as required by COVID-19 public health and safety directors. So please visit the High Speed Rail website for the most current information. Okay, now I would like to review with you some instructions about how to participate in today's Zoom call. I would imagine many of you are already experienced with this as we've all been doing so many virtual meetings, but let me review that just to be sure. For those of you who are on the Zoom link, you can see us now via camera to start the meeting, but we will be turning off our panelists' cameras during the presentation so that you can focus on the slides, which we'll review with you here. We will turn the cameras back on during the question and answer period so that you can see us answering your question. That will be helpful so you know who is speaking. We will be taking your questions after the presentation in one of 3 ways: online, by the raise your hand option, by telephone, or by the chat. So let me review each one. So online, for those of you who are using our Zoom link, use the raise your hand button there at the bottom of your screen. We will call upon you by your name on the screen and unmute you in order for you to verbally ask your question. If you would like to ask a question, again, open the attendees tab, click on the raise your hand button, and I will call on you when it's your turn to speak. We will unmute your line, and please ask one question at a time. This almost goes without saying, but I will go ahead and say it for the record. Please be respectful in your comment to the authority panelists. Any threatening or profane or other inappropriate language will not be permitted. Disruptive participants will be removed from the webinar. I don't expect that would be a problem, and we actually really look forward to our conversation with you. If you're having any technical problem, please send us a message via the chat function there on your Zoom screen. Or you can also email us at support@meethsrsocal.org. So a variety of ways there for you to communicate with us if you're having a problem. Okay, the second way that you can ask a question is by phone. So some of you might only be on a phone line right now, which you can also raise your hand on the phone. You can do this by pushing *9 on your telephone keypad. This will come up on our system here. We'll be able to identify you by your phone number. So we'll be taking your questions in order, and I will be calling on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. We will be unmuting your line in order for you to speak, and then muting your line as we move on to the next caller. Finally, you can also submit a question via the chat function. So the chat button that you have on your screen, please use that and just type in your question to us. Please be clear in writing your question, and we request that you write 1 question at a time. Feel free to also use the chat function on your screen for those of you online for any technical difficulties you might be experiencing or any other meeting information that you might need. Our staff is standing by here to assist you, and they're great in being able to direct you and a lot of times answering your questions before we even have to address it overall. So please use that if that's helpful to you. In any event, we want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions in any manner you prefer. That's why we are here tonight. Again, I have to repeat that your comments or questions as part of this meeting are not official, formal public comments, and this is purely informational, and we hope it's helpful to you. Okay, so enough of all the instructions and introductions. I would very much like to start our presentation, and I will start by just reviewing a couple of things here on screen with you. So our presentation today is broken up into a few parts. I'll be reviewing with you our meeting goals, and then our speakers will be walking you through a statewide overview called Connecting California High-Speed Rail Program. Diane will be talking about the project, specifically Burbank to Los Angeles project section. Then we'll be moving into the specifics on the Main Street grade separation. We'll then come back and review environmental next steps and how you can stay involved, and then we'll be getting to your questions and answers. I also mentioned that I'll be reviewing with you a quick online demonstration of our website. So we'll do that very quickly before we go to Q&A, and then we can come back to it if we have more time to walk you through that. Our meeting goals today, as I've mentioned, but I will reiterate, is to provide you information about the California High-Speed Rail Program, including the specific proposed Main Street grade separation. We are here to answer your questions relating to the draft document, its analysis, its impacts, and next steps. We want to ensure that you know how to provide comments on this document. As we mentioned, we are now in a formal public comment period, which ends next Monday, August 31st. So we will be reviewing that with you before we end our call today. With that, I would like to introduce again, Bruce Armstead, who will be reviewing with you the overall statewide information. Bruce, be sure to unmute yourself.
Good evening. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Bruce Armstead. I'm Director of Operations and Maintenance for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. And our project, the High-Speed Rail Project, is made up of 2 phases. Phase 1 is 520 miles. It extends from San Francisco to Los Angeles and Anaheim. Of that 520 miles, 119 miles are under construction in the Central Valley. Phase 2 of our project connects Merced to Sacramento, and it's shown in yellow in the figure on the right. And it also connects Los Angeles to San Diego via the Inland Empire. will run at speeds up to 200 miles an hour, and that'll be 220 in the Central Valley where we're dedicated. And we have up to 24 stations that are shown in the white dots on the graphic. Next slide, please. Investing in all regions. We're currently invested $441 million in the Link US project, which is LA Union Station, and it's currently in the federal environmental review process. We've also invested $363 million in environmental review work for high-speed rail, Metrolink, and LoSAN, and these are regional rail initiatives in our high-speed rail corridor. Safety improvements, we're investing $77 million in the Rosecrans Marquardt grade separation in Santa Fe Springs. And lastly, we're investing $389 million of Prop 1A funds in the Metro Regional Connector Project and Metrolink Tier 4 locomotives. We're also investing in the positive train control initiatives in the project area. Next slide, please. This slide shows our Burbank Airport and LA Union Station. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Diane to talk about the Burbank to Los Angeles section of the project. Diane?
Thank you, Bruce. So the Burbank to Los Angeles project section is approximately 14 miles in length. We have in the environmental document, there is a project alternative and a no project alternative. And what you see on the map to the right is the project alternative. Oh, I'm sorry. What you see on the map to the right is the project alternative, which is proposed to begin at the Burbank Airport High-Speed Rail Station and end at Los Angeles Union Station. Electrified tracks will run in the existing rail corridor, and the speeds of the train while approaching Main Street will be approximately 25 miles per hour as the trains come in and out of Union Station. So an important thing to note for this entire corridor is because it's a shared rail corridor in an urban area, the high-speed rail trains cannot go faster than the other trains that are currently using the corridor in the shared portion of the corridor, which is most of it. So the benefits of high-speed rail are that they improve operational characteristics for passenger and freight services, will improve safety, will reduce emissions and congestion, and there'll be more nonstop connections on the train, including being able to go from Anaheim to San Francisco when all is said and done. Next slide, please. Some of the features of the shared rail corridor are positive train control, which restricts train speeds and serves as a fail-safe system. And it takes over the system, which prevents the running of trains on red signals. Corridor protection and detection, like fencing, walls, and sound barriers. Grade separations, which we will talk about a little bit later, which will take vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians over or under active railroad tracks to prevent accidents and free up traffic flow. An early earthquake warning system, and we are also doing planning around all of the high-speed rail stations in conjunction with the local agencies or cities in those areas. For the Los Angeles portion of this project section, the alignment crosses the Los Angeles River near State Route 110. The design is sensitive to the Rio de Los Angeles State Park, the Los Angeles State Historic Park, and the Albion Riverside Park. There is a proposed grade separation at Main Street, which we will talk about in detail a little bit later. We have been conducting coordination with the Los Angeles River Path, the Taylor Yard River Park, and we have been working as partners with Metro on the Link Us project, which is designed to increase capacity for rail station at Los Angeles Union Station while reducing train idling times. Los Angeles Union Station will eventually accommodate future high-speed rail service and expand the station's capacity. So what is a grade separation? There's a photo, a rendering of one sort of grade separation in the middle of this slide, but a grade separation is a roadway that is realigned either over or under the train tracks to eliminate hazards. So the High-Speed Rail Authority is environmentally clearing numerous grade separations along this alignment. And the benefits of grade separation include improving safety. So grade separations eliminate conflicts between trains and vehicles and pedestrians and bicyclists, increases the speed that trains can travel through areas, although that is not the case in the Los Angeles area. As I mentioned before, trains will be traveling at about approximately 25 miles per hour approaching Main Street. Improves trains' operational reliability by providing an opportunity for increased passenger rail service. Serves to reduce noise as the trains don't need to sound their horns, and there won't be gate bells that are making noise as the train crosses an intersection. They serve to decrease traffic congestion as traffic can continue to flow while the train is crossing the intersection because the roadway is separated from the railroad tracks, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles that will no longer be idling at an at-grade crossing. So the grade separations that are being environmentally cleared in the Burbank to Los Angeles project section, you can see that there are 6 of them, and 1 is in the city of Burbank, 3 are in the city of Glendale. There is 1 that borders Glendale and Atwater Village in Los Angeles, and then the Main Street grade separation, which is the focus of this presentation. So on to Main Street. So the existing conditions, Main Street as you know it at this crossing right now, is 2 railroad tracks on each side of the river that are at street level, which we refer to as at grade. So one side is Main Street and one side is Albion Street. And the tracks are used by Metrolink, Amtrak, and Union Pacific trains currently. The area features industrial and business operations as well as residential neighborhoods and schools. And whenever a train comes through, the crossing gates for the intersection on both sides of the river come down and stop vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic whenever the trains are coming through. You can see some photos down below, which were taken last year in the summer. And this is photos of traffic being stopped while a train is going through and the gates are down. So the proposed conditions, so for the proposed Main Street grade separation, there would be a new bridge crossing over both sets of tracks in the Los Angeles River. And so that blue curved line, and you can see the pointer going across it, that represents the proposed new roadway bridge. The new bridge would start rising near Sotelo Street on the west bank and return to grade before Clover Street on the east bank. This would require reconfiguring streets and parcel acquisitions. It would provide for sidewalks and bicycle lanes for pedestrian and cyclist use. And something very important is that the historic Main Street Bridge will remain in place. And you know, there would have to be some coordination to determine what future uses would be, but one future use is possible pedestrian and cyclist use, bicycle use. The proposed Main Street grade separation, and what you see on the right is a rendering of what it could potentially look like, the roadway over the railroad tracks. The overpass option removes the street level crossing conflict, again, the at-grade conflict between trains and vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, improving overall safety. It strengthens the road for a greater line of sight and stopping distance. It allows for emergency vehicle access at all times, since ambulances and fire trucks and police cars will not be stopped at the gates when a train is crossing. It will eliminate the noise from train horns and gates, reduce emissions and traffic delays as cars are not idling as trains cross. There would be permanent and temporary access impacts at adjacent properties. Next slide, please. So passenger train, with the addition of high-speed rail, passenger train movements are projected to more than triple by the year 2040. This includes the introduction of high-speed rail service and planned increases in Metrolink and Amtrak service. Traffic wait times at that intersection, as you know it now, would increase significantly if the crossing at Main Street remains at street level. The proposed grade separation at Main Street is included in this draft DIR EIS for environmental clearance for when and if a grade separation is deemed necessary. So it doesn't mean that it will be built as soon as high-speed rail opens. It will be environmentally cleared so that it is cleared one of the hurdles for being built when it is deemed necessary to improve traffic conditions, vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic conditions. So it doesn't mean it will be constructed before high-speed train service is introduced in the corridor, and it could be built by high-speed rail. It could be built by other agencies who also have an interest in traffic improvements and how traffic and rail interact at this particular intersection. And it could very well be done in partnership with more than one agency. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the proposed Main Street grade separation are that it would enhance safety and access, eliminating the potential for vehicle and pedestrian and bicycle and train collisions for all activity in the corridor. Main Street is very important for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians, including students at nearby schools, rail passengers, and the surrounding businesses and residential neighborhoods. It will improve traffic because it will avoid high-speed rail, train, and vehicular at-grade crossing conflicts, and it eliminates the need for the placement and lowering of the rail crossing gates that would cause traffic delays. It would improve air quality because it would minimize idling time and emissions from vehicles at the rail crossing, and eliminate the need for trains to sound horns or ring the bells for the bells to be rung when the gates are going down, and ensures emergency access for emergency vehicles and first responders who do not get stuck at the intersection when the gates are down when trains are crossing. Now we are going to address some of the topics that we have heard from you so far in our open houses, during the public comment period, during office hours that some of you have signed up for, and during our public hearing. And so they fall into the categories of outreach and engagement, community and business impacts, and construction. So this is a list of just some of the outreach and engagement we have done on this project section over the years, including community open houses in different years in which more than 850 community members attended. We've had bilingual and webcast meetings and offered interpreter services in up to 8 languages. We have a social media presence. We have held what we call stakeholder working groups, where more than 400 organizations have been invited over the years. The stakeholder working groups, including community groups, school groups, chambers of commerce, environmental groups, various groups that have memberships where they can get the word out to people. We have held meetings with key stakeholders and community organizations. The next category shows you all the ways that we have tried to get the word out in addition to these meetings, including postal mailings to 48,000 stakeholders. For 5,300 stakeholders along the alignment, we have done door-to-door drop-offs of flyers, social media ads and e-blasts, this information session tonight. And we started out with a 45-day comment extension, comment period, which we have now extended twice to result in 94 days total, to recognize that people needed more time to absorb all of this information, particularly during COVID. And with that, the next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Tyler Bonstead, who is going to talk to you about some of the other topics that we've heard interest from you about. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Diane. We are pulling up Tyler now, so we can turn on his camera and I believe unmute, and we can take it from there. Tyler, can you?
All right, well,
go right
I
ahead.
can. I'll get started, and hopefully the video will come up here in a minute.
Yeah.
So a couple issues I'd like to talk to that we definitely got a lot of comments on. The first one was focused on maintaining access to local businesses during construction and operation. So we have a couple slide arrows here to talk to this. And starting here, clicking once, what we'll show is on the East Bank, where it's the biggest issue, where the current access is to Main Street. So from the south side of Main Street, starting closest to the river, you can see it's at Gibbon Street. And then to the east of that, Lamar Street, and then Clover Street, further east from that. On the north side of Main Street, you currently have access at Albion Street, which is basically right where the tracks cross Main Street on the east bank of the river, and then Avenue 17, further to the east near Lanza Brothers Market. So what happens if we click again is with the bridge built, it pushes those access points further east because the bridge is basically up in the air to be able to go over the railroad tracks. So what we've proposed is two modified connections and two new connections to help maintain access to local businesses. So you can see closest to the river, what we're proposing is to connect Albion Street to Gibbon Street and Lamar Street with a new roadway that would go underneath the new bridge. To the south, we have a new connection between Lamar Street and Clover Street, which then allows access to Main Street from the south. And then we have a slightly modified connection from Avenue 17 from the north. And so what this basically allows is you still have connection points to Main Street from the north and the south, but they are pushed to the east, given the slope of the bridge, and then those two new connections to try to connect these existing businesses and streets as best we can. So if we click one more time, you'll see the intended way to preserve local business access on the south side of Main Street is to channel autos and trucks to the new Clover Street connection and then up to Main Street via Clover Street. So that's kind of an idea of the current design and how it is proposed to have business access on both sides of Main Street there. The next slide talks to kind of a corollary of that, which is truck traffic. And the concern that there could be truck traffic being diverted from the south side of Main Street to the north side via that new Albion-Gibbon connection. So if we click once, you'll see the arrows kind of shown of what we've heard for comments. And then clicking again is what we were showing on the last slide, which is basically we want trucks to be using that Clover Street connection to reach Main Street and then use Main Street to basically move outside the neighborhood. And so we'll have a design that discourages trucks from taking the route in red, which would then go up past the Parks residential schools to the north of Main Street. Another question that comment that we've heard a lot has to do with how this project interacts with the LA River path and with bicycle and pedestrian connections. So an opportunity that we have here is that the current Main Street Bridge is proposed to remain after high-speed rail construction is complete. It's a historic structure, and we think that it can basically be repurposed for use for recreation or other activities in the river area there. So we have been and we will continue coordinating with the City of Los Angeles, LA Metro, who is leading the design and the environmental clearance for that LA River path, to determine the best way that we can reuse that current bridge, how we can best connect the neighborhood to the path along the river, and how we can best use the new Main Street Bridge to connect bicycles and pedestrians across the river. So they are ongoing with their design the same as we are, and we'll continue to coordinate with them on that. The final issue I'd like to talk about is parks and recreation impacts. So Albion Riverside Park has recently been constructed just to the north of Main Street, and there have been concerns about what is the effect of the project onto the park. So what you can see if we click once is that there is a small portion at the south end of the park, about 0.1 acres, that would be needed for construction and operation of the new bridge. If we click again, we will see that the area is currently not used for recreation. So it's a paved area that hosts a cell phone tower and some supporting equipment. And so while looking at the effect on the park, which is an important part of any environmental document, we found, clicking one last time here, that there's a de minimis, basically a minor impact, as we've noted in the environmental document. So we do have an effect on the park, but it is minor, and it's basically the building of columns in that area where the cell tower is now, and then to have the new bridge going over that south end of the park. So we talk about that analysis and that impact quite a bit more in Volume 1, Chapter 4 of the environmental document, which has to do with Section 4F, which is basically parks and recreation impacts. So those are 4 of the kind of key technical issues that we have been hearing about quite a bit, and that I covered in a bit more detail there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. I think we'd like to come back to Diane to complete our presentation. Diane? There you
Hi.
go. Take it away.
Thanks. So what you see here is just where we are, a little bit of history about where we've been, and then down below where we are in this process. So Genoveva talked about the background in the beginning, and where we are now, if you look at the circles on the bottom, is that we are in the public comment period, and shortly that comment period will be closing on August 31st. And then we will take all of the public and agency comments, and we will evaluate them, we will respond to them, and the comments will be addressed and included in the final EIR-EIS. They will be included as an appendix to the final EIR-EIS. And ultimately, this will culminate in, the goal is to have final EIR-EIS approvals, which will be voted by the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board. These are some of the ways during this period that we have offered different ways for the public to get in touch and get information. So we have held phone and online appointments, will be made on online appointments, and have held phone appointments by request with project staff in June and July, and there are still some opportunities left for individual appointments. They're typically 15 minutes, sometimes a half an hour, depending on what you want to talk about, and we find out what subjects you want to talk about, and we make sure we have subject matter experts on the telephone. So there are some opportunities for that still. We're having this information session tonight to hopefully provide you with more information, and of course to answer your questions in a few minutes, which we're looking forward to. We had an online open house. We've held 2 telephone town halls. Down below here, you see the different opportunities to submit formal public comments. And if you haven't submitted your comments, we hope that you will. Hopefully you'll be more informed after this session and tonight, and this will help you to formulate your comments. You can send them to us by traditional mail. There is a comment form on the authority's website. There is an email address shown here to submit your comments by email. We have a telephone hotline which has voicemail recording on it, and your verbal comments during this comment period will be considered as formal comments, and they will be included in the record. And there is an opportunity to submit your comments orally during the virtual public hearing that was held on July 8th. And just to quickly tell you what the next steps are, at the conclusion of public comment period, which is on August 31st, we will prepare responses to all of the comments received, and all of these responses will be included in the final EIR-EIS. We will revise the environmental document as needed. We will release the final EIR-EIS, and the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board will consider approval of the project and issue a record of decision, which is at the federal level, and a notice of determination, which is at the state level. And your comments are very important, so we hope that you submit your comments. I think, Hanno, it's now you. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Diane, and all of our presenters, and to all of you who have joined us. We have a good set of folks online, and I already see a few questions coming in. We definitely want to hear from you, so please submit your questions for today's session, as we mentioned, and we will get to them in order. We will be reminding you of this due date of next Monday, August 31st, and we'll review with you before we adjourn the various methods that are available to you to comment. So we'll take your questions very quickly before we do, because in case anybody drops off, I would like to just point you toward our project website that we've been referring to. So this is the meethsrsocal.org website. And if you go to this website through your browser, this is the homepage that you will see. And I just want to review that in the homepage, it provides all the top line information, and it's essentially, the whole website is structured as an open house, as if we were holding this meeting in person, but now we're doing it virtually. So we have structured it as if we would structure an in-person meeting. You can see on the homepage, there's a quick link to enter the open house, webinar information like the information for today, and how to comment. So you'll see these links throughout the website, and they will all take you to the same place to comment on the project or to review the documents. We wanted to make it very user-friendly. Of course, we are complying with Title VI, and here's all the information about how we are doing that. And at the bottom of every page on this website are quick links. So again, you can see some of these same icons repeated, where you can actually access the documents, comment on the document, etc. So very quickly, before we get to your questions, I just want to show you how the website is structured. You're familiar with the 3 lines, which provides the menu of a website on your phone or on your computer. And here are the various tabs or stations. We have them structured, stations 1 through 7. And if you click on any one of them, it essentially walks you through the open house. This is station 1 here. There is Bruce. And if you go down again, you see some of the same quick links that you can access to move through to get to whatever it is that you want. You can also, on each one of the stations, just tab forward to the next station here. And it gives you a walkthrough of the entire website. This is our statewide overview. And each one also presents you the various documents that are specific to that station and any videos that we may have produced to help outline that information. And again, you can continue to each station. This is station 3, which provides more information on the alternatives, again, with your station documents down here and videos. and on and on. I will come back to this if we have time, just so that we can get to your questions, because I would want you to see where the draft document itself is available to you in the various languages for the executive summary and how to look at it online. But hopefully that was helpful to you. And there's always a variety of ways for you to access the information via the main menu or those quick links. So we'll be coming back to that if we have time, but I very much would like to go ahead and get right to your questions. I see that we have one person so far with his hand raised. Let me just go back to that and make sure that I take these questions in order. So I would like to first acknowledge Michael Tesler. I see that you have your hand raised. We will unmute you, as we mentioned, and we would like for you to go ahead and speak your question clearly, and we will go ahead and answer. Michael. Oh, and if I can ask you to state any affiliation that you have, and if this is your first meeting with us, it's good to know.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Great. So my name is Michael Tesler. I'm a resident of Cypress Park, where this alignment is passing through. This is my first meeting. Thank you very much for the comprehensive information. My interest is actually in the rail separation. It's the rail line separating Taylor Yard from the G2 parcel and the Bowtie parcel, which is a proposed 100-acre park that's going to be part of the LA River revitalization. And I couldn't find on the website whether there was going to be any grade separation to connect Taylor Yard with the G2 parcel, the other 50-acre parcel. And I just wanted to get some, maybe someone has some information on where to find that.
Thank you very much, Michael. So the panelists heard the question. Would this be a question, Tyler, for you to address? Maybe to start, Diane, possibly? Go right ahead,
Yes,
Tyler.
Thank you. So I can answer that one, I think. So basically, we don't have any new grade separations proposed in that area to connect the parks along the river to the neighborhood. What we are basically proposing is that there's currently a roadway that runs just on the south edge of the Rio de Los Angeles State Park there that runs to the Metrolink Central Maintenance Facility. And that is intended to serve as one of the main accesses to the G2 parcel. And we would have some changes we would have to make to that bridge to basically put the 2 new tracks in for high-speed rail. But that is basically intended to be the new, or the main access to the parks from the south there. There'd also be the new bridge being built across the river right now. And then Bowtie is basically accessed from an underpass by SR2 there on the north edge. We're not proposing, though, as part of our project, any new overpasses, say near Sotomayor or any of those areas like that. We're basically just proposing to build 2 new tracks next to the existing Metrolink tracks and to preserve the access through the area.
Great, thank you, Tyler. What I'd like to do is just continue with the line of questions that we have. So if there's any follow-up questions, feel free to do that through the chat or through raising your hand. I'm gonna, just for the benefit of our panelists, we have 2 questions through our chat, which I'll go ahead and read. Think about that, and then next I will be calling on Pedro Jimenez. I see that you have your hand raised. Allow me to just give our panel a heads up on a couple of questions that are coming up, and then we'll come right to you. So we have a question on our staff chat. When will current comments be made public if they are not already? That's one question. And then there's another question in relation to the historic Main Street Bridge, how it could attract encampments, which exists like today. So be thinking about that. But for now, Pedro, I would like for you to go ahead and ask your question for the panel, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Pedro. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Pedro Jimenez. I'm the newly hired principal at Ann Street Elementary. And I have a couple of questions for you. Right now, we're involved in distance learning. And as it is, Ann Street, our Wi-Fi, we're having so many connectivity issues, and even with the hotspots that are linked to Verizon and T-Mobile, because we have these railways, these electrical cables running through and around the mead homes. My concern is you're going to add more concrete, more barriers between the cell phone towers and the Wi-Fi systems that are around. Have you considered what the impact is going to be in terms of connectivity? The other question I have is this is going to be, so we're right next to downtown, right? Olvera Street, Chinatown, really popular destinations for not only the world, but us as residents. I love visiting Olvera Street and hanging out, walking around back before COVID days. Now it's going to be, my fear is that now that there's an easier access. So before, because of the train, because of the arms coming, because of the safety measures, and it really kept people away from using that street to access downtown. My fears now is going to be the increase in traffic, and so virtual learning is connectivity issues, and once we come back to the school site, it's a safety I'm just concerned in terms of safety for my students, the increase in traffic. And already, as soon as cars pass those railways, they speed up. Their speed just increases, and now they're not going to have those railways to sort of buffer the speed that they're coming in at. And so my questions are, have you considered either of those factors, connectivity, internet, Wi-Fi issues for my community, the mead homes, and then safety in terms of the increase in traffic and the ease with that this is going to provide in terms of downtown for my residents?
Excellent. Thank you so much for your question. Really appreciate, absolutely concerned. We want to think about these issues as we're doing these types of major planning in the area. So Tyler, would you want to take that first in relation to perhaps the speeds and kind of the access that's coming through the area? And then would it be Bruce who might talk about connectivity and kind of that infrastructure surrounding projects like this?
Well, I actually might say that Rob might be able to talk very well to both of these issues, as he's our environmental lead.
Okay.
So maybe Rob will take a first crack at it, and then I will jump in as needed.
Okay, sounds good. Rob, thank you for joining us. Rob is one of our expert consultants that deals with our environmental planning. We don't see your camera, but I believe your audio is working. Rob, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, and not sure. Here we go. Hello, good evening, everyone.
We can
okay,
go right ahead.
So Pedro's first question about the Wi-Fi connectivity, that is a very good one. In our environmental document, we do have a chapter that addresses potential electromagnetic interference that could be caused by the high-speed train and by the overhead electrical catenary system. With regard specifically to Wi-Fi connectivity, and he specifically mentioned concern about structures, that is not specifically addressed. So that would be actually a very good comment, Pedro, for you to submit on the project. We can do a little bit deeper dive there. Our focus on the electromagnetic interference is primarily on sensitive facilities, medical facilities where there may be equipment that could be potentially interfered with, as well as other communication facilities. And as you noted, there's certainly quite a few here in this area. With regard to traffic safety, our traffic study, which is included in section 3.2 of the document, that addresses more just changes in traffic volumes. You correctly noted that with the additional activity, ridership we expect at LA Union Station, that would increase vehicular traffic. We certainly hope people also find other means to access the high-speed train service, whether it be via bike or other transit service. However, as far as the issue of traffic safety, We really just more focus on the issue as far as traffic effects. Certainly all the existing measures that would be in place with regard to local roadway safety, those would still be in place. But as far as any specific safety type of discussion, we do have a section also that addresses safety and security, but that is much more focused on safety at the station. So I think, again, Pedro, you've raised two very good questions that we would encourage you to submit as comments, and we can be sure to address those in our final document.
That's exactly the type of follow-up I think that it really benefits folks to understand what's in the document, what's not in the document. And that's the whole point of releasing a draft document so that people can point out what your concerns and thoughts are. I think that addresses that question, Tyler. I'd like to move on to a few more. Thankfully, we have a few more questions coming in. So I'm going to come back. I'm sorry, Diane.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing in general, which we didn't emphasize when we were doing our presentation. The design that you're seeing here and the design that is in our EIR, draft EIR EIS is 15% design. So 15% compared to full design, which is 100%. It's often called conceptual design. And what's important to note is that after environmental clearance, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done and a lot of coordination with communities, with cities involved, with the agencies. And so you're still going to be hearing from us, and there will still be coordination, and a lot of fine-tuning needs to happen.
Excellent. Very good point. Yes, and so therefore we call it draft. It's the first public release of a proposed project that has still a lot of planning and design to ensue. So thank you for making that point, Diane. I want to acknowledge that we have one person with their hand raised, Nish Krishnamurthy. I see your hand raised. We will come back to you. I want to get to a couple of the folks' questions that have been waiting on our chat. The first one is, when will current comments be made public if they are not already? So perhaps, Tyler, can you just talk about that process of how we collect comments, respond to them, and the release of the final document?
Sure. So we'll be collecting comments up through the end of this month, and then we've actually already started responding to them. So what we will do is look at the comment, figure out how it pertains to the environmental document that we have, the draft that we've published already. And then we will basically be adding a whole nother volume to our environmental document for the final document that we release, which will be sometime next year. And long and the short of it, every question, every comment that we get formally through this process, we will respond to, and that will be included in our final environmental document. So that's I think the basic thing. And if the question was maybe asking a little bit along the lines of, if these comments today are not formal comments, how do you make a formal comment? I think Henno hit on that before, and we'll probably hit on it again later on, that you can do, email, telephone, all those different things. So if you give us a formal comment, we will respond to it as part of our environmental document.
That's correct. Thank you for that clarification, Tyler. And again, I'll reiterate that your comments or questions here today are really informational and designed to provide you additional information so that you can make a formal comment. So today's session is not part of the formal comment record and will not be responded to directly as part of the document. We're here to just give you additional information so that you can do that. So we really encourage, following our meeting today, for you to take one of those methods and submit your formal comment to us by next Monday, August 31st. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question that I mentioned earlier about encampments. If I can read the full question from Michael Banner. Thank you for the question. The historic Main Street Bridge could attract encampments, much like exists today with freeway underpasses through Los Angeles. What mitigations, if any, are legally possible? Has the LA City Attorney been consulted with? So who would be the right person to take that, Tyler or Rob?
I think Rob would be good to respond to that one.
Go right ahead, Rob. There you go.
There you go. Thank you. You've unmuted me. Yeah, thank you, Michael. I don't think we got to that question during our office hours meeting with you, but Diane, you'd have to speak to any discussions the authority has had with the City of LA Attorney Office with regard to prevention of future homeless encampments that could occur. That is not specifically or not an issue that has been addressed in the document. Certainly as far as the high-speed rail right-of-way itself, that would be completely fenced and enclosed and would prevent any human encroachment. But your question is with regard to the existing historic Main Street Bridge and what might happen there. That is, the question as far as how that might be reused for future purposes. As we discussed earlier in the presentation, the idea would be that it would remain in place and be available or be available for pedestrian and bicycle use. That's certainly something that I know the authority has initiated discussions with the city on. Diane, I don't know if you have anything to add to that or not with regard to the specific question on homeless encampments.
Yes, so I'll say again that this is 15% design right now. It's conceptual. There are a lot of steps between what you're seeing on this screen and construction starting. And there will be a lot of coordination with the different LA City departments, with Metro, with the community, anyone who is involved in this. And so as this moves closer to reality, whenever that is, whoever is actually constructing this will be having these conversations. But to my knowledge, these conversations have not yet happened because this is still very conceptual.
Thank you,
Bruce,
Diane.
is there anything that you want to add?
No, but you've said it exactly right. These are conceptual plans, and as we develop the projects, we will make the necessary contacts and coordinations with whomever is going to develop the project.
Absolutely. Okay, so next we're gonna, Nish, we're gonna come to you. I see that your hand is raised, but to give our panelists a heads up, I'm gonna read the topics of the couple additional questions that we have. We're doing really good on time, by the way. We're already past the 1 hour mark and we have plenty of time still to address the questions that we have in the queue. So let's make sure that we do a good job with that. So coming up after Nish's questions will be a question about business disruption. There's another question about anticipated timeline for construction and additional questions about increased traffic on Main Street. So a little bit more just for the panel to know that's coming. So Nish, thank you for joining us. I see that your hand is raised. We will unmute you and please introduce yourself, any affiliation, and let us know if you've joined us before, if this is your first time.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Nish Krishnamurthy. I'm a resident of downtown LA. And yeah, sorry. So I joined this meeting a little late. So maybe you addressed this before I logged in. But my question, so I have a few questions. So first, like, is it like, sorry, I thought you mentioned in one of your slides that the bridge might not necessarily be built, right? Like I think you said somewhere that the train might come in like at grade into Union Station. Is that correct? And two, I had a question just about the broader EIR in general. Like, is this part of like the segment from Burbank to Union Station, or is this EIR like kind of like specific to this bridge? And three, my third question was, like, is this presentation and other presentations posted online on y'all's page?
Great, thank you. If the panelist doesn't mind, I just want to take that last question real quick. So this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to our website so you can view the presentation and the associated questions with it. And then for the previous two questions about Diane, I think you talked about how the timing of the construction of Main Street grade separation may follow high-speed rail actually operating. And then if someone can talk about, maybe you, Diane, his second question as to if how this is a document that covers the entire segment between Burbank and Los Angeles and not just the Main Street Bridge. Diane?
So I'm going to answer your second question first. This is not a separate EIR, EIS for the proposed Main Street grade separation. There is a focus on this tonight because this was geared toward the Lincoln Heights neighborhood. There have been many questions regarding this throughout this public comment period, and we thought that we should provide additional information to help residents and businesses in the area to have more information so that they could develop their comments and submit them before the close of the public comment period. So this is one grade separation that's being cleared in the Burbank to Los Angeles high-speed rail project section. With regard to your first question, if I understood it, what we were saying, and there was a slide, maybe the previous slide said this, we are environmentally clearing this grade separation. Oh, maybe it was after that. Anyway,
Okay,
we are environmentally clearing this grade separation so that if and when it is needed, because the volume of trains has the gates going down at that road crossing more frequently, it will be easier for somebody to build it and fund it. So with our whole project document, once we have environmental clearance, it will be easier for high-speed rail to apply for funding sources because it's one step closer to approvals. So what this slide right here, the last bullet says, it doesn't mean it will be constructed before high-speed train service is introduced in the corridor. So if all of the high-speed rail projections for service come to fruition by 2040, along with what Metrolink and Amtrak are projecting for their future service, then by 2040, train service will be about tripled compared to what you see today. But that won't happen all at once. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this grade separation needs to be built at the opening of high-speed rail. And high-speed rail may not even be the agency that's building it. Once our document is environmentally cleared, as different agencies and cities along this corridor have an interest in furthering elements of this project, they could choose to fund it. We could partner with somebody. So the environmental clearance is important, so when it's necessary, it will progress more smoothly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, totally. It does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very
Thank
much. So I'd like to take next a couple of the questions that we have, as I mentioned a little earlier. Rob Davidson's question is about business disruption. It says, how can I find out about details regarding disruption to businesses along Gibbons Street? For example, the duration of construction, intermediate access during construction, access after construction. So with that, Tyler, would you be the person to start us off there? And then the next question, I mentioned it earlier, has to do with construction and then increased traffic on Main Street. And then I'll kind of give you a heads up of the remaining questions. So go right ahead, Tyler. And let me know if you want me to pull up a different view to help with your.
Yeah, well, I was going to say we have a couple slides to talk a little bit about construction that are after the main part of this presentation that I think could be helpful here.
Let's do that. I'll pull them up and then you let me know if you want me to advance forward.
Okay. So yeah, in a very basic sense, we don't have a huge amount of detail in the environmental document on the construction sequence and phasing for this specific grade separation project, just because, like Diane mentioned earlier, we're only at 15% design and we haven't necessarily laid out all of that detail yet. What I can say is that the overall construction of the grade separation would take something along the line of 4 years, and that there would be different parts of Main Street and the surrounding neighborhood closed down during that time. And so we put together a conceptual idea of what a construction plan could look like. This isn't necessarily the specific one for the project that you can see goes through the four years there. And let me just kind of walk through here. So this here shows today the current conditions, with the blue lines being the high-speed rail tracks and the yellow lines being the different streets in the area, and noting the fact that they're basically open for traffic. So this is, say, how Main Street is today. If we go to the next slide, what you can see is that the first step of the construction process would likely take about 1.5 years and would involve preparing for the construction of the actual new bridge. And so what we're showing is that for those first 18 months, one of the main activities would be acquiring and clearing the right-of-way that would be needed for construction. And so that's basically the purple areas that you can see on the east and the west banks of the river, where the new roadway would go, where you'd have the bridge coming into ramps that would get back down to where Main Street is. And then you can see also acquiring land for that new Clover connection that I talked about earlier on the southeastern side of the project area. Going to the next slide, there's also going to be a process to relocate utilities. This would take about 1 year and would be focused on the western and eastern approaches to the bridge to basically get the current utilities out of the way, either for construction or permanently. And so this would have kind of off and on impacts to the streets as you go in and kind of cut down and get the utilities and move them to different areas. Another step after that, what we'd propose is to build basically a construction detour area on the west side of the river. And so that's shown in kind of a yellow area just to the west of Wilhart Street, I believe. And then also to prepare for building that new Albion connection, which is shown just on the east side of the river there, as well as the new Clover connection. So that would involve, in that case, closing down Albion Street for the area just by the park there. And this is what we would propose takes about 4 months to construct those new connections there. And then the final step to prepare for construction would be to open those new connections. So you can see the detour road on the west bank, which is shown in yellow, the new Albion connection, which is on the east bank, shown in blue, and the new Clover connection, which is in the southeast, shown in blue. So this would be done during the first 16 months of the project. If we're talking about Gibbon Street specifically, for example, there hasn't really been many impacts in that area yet. So going then to the second step of the construction process, this would take about 2 years, and this would actually be the construction of the new bridge over the river. So that is shown in yellow there. You can see it's proposed north of the current Main Street Bridge. And during this time, Main Street and those other connections in the area would remain open. So this could be built without needing to close down those streets. There would be a couple sub-steps of this process if we click once. One has to do with building this new Avenue 17 kind of Darwin connection in the east, northeast side of the river there, which would take about 5 months. And then clicking again, that then moves us into phase 3. So this would be where we would likely have the most major impacts on Main Street itself. And so what you can see here, and this is where we have to build the approaches. So basically where you get from the new high bridge down to ground level. And so we'd have a long stretch from Sotelo Street up to Wilhart Street that would be closed during this time, as well as the stretch between Gibbon Street and Clover Street on the east bank, which you can see in red there. One thing I would note is that the old Main Street Bridge would still be open during this time, so you could still go across the river, but it would be much more for kind of local access than, say, through traffic of people heading from, say, Main Street near I-5 into downtown. So this would be when these areas would be closed down at the start of construction for about a month. And then if we go to the next slide, you can see the main time frame here would be about 12 months to build these new connections. And that's basically to get from ground level up to the new level of the bridge, which is roughly 24 feet of clearance over the railroad tracks on either side of the river. So this would be the main construction of those approaches. Going to the next slide, you can see then we would be opening up some of these new connections, especially the kind of old Main Street, Lamar, Albion connection, which is shown in blue on the east side of the river there. And it is noted kind of with the dark blue that by this point, the new bridge would be done. So that's what's signified by the dark blue there. And then I believe the final step of this process is to rebuild that Clover Main Street intersection on the east side. So there would be a closure there for about 3 months. And so then that would take us in the next slide here to our final step of the process, which is basically opening up the new Main Street Bridge. So you can see that would take about a month to get all these new connections made and to get everything flowing again. And then one final step would involve restoring the land that was used during construction, closing down the at-grade crossings. So this entire time, the old Main Street Bridge has been open and the crossings, the railroad tracks have been opened. That would now be closed down and folks would be using the new Main Street Bridge. And that would then allow it to be reused like we have talked about before. So I think that's the last slide. And so once again, kind of says at the bottom, this is a general idea of how it could be built. It gives an idea of that 4-year time frame, but that there's only parts of it that would really have different areas closed down, how the bridge could be constructed and how you can try to keep as much up and running as possible during that time.
Awesome. Thank you for walking us through that, Tyler. I think that answered a lot of details and folks can look at that a little bit more closely. I'm going to skip ahead to another question by Jill Dill and Nika that's also in relation to businesses and the impact that might be experienced by businesses. So she writes, I would like to know which businesses and homes will be impacted in the process of construction. So obviously, folks are concerned about the footprint of construction surrounding the Main Street Bridge. So can you talk, or maybe Rob, a little bit more about how we handle property impacts?
Well, we also have
Sure,
someone from, don't we have somebody from our right-of-way department on that?
Yes, we sure do.
As well?
We sure do. So if either Tyler or Rob want to talk kind of any level of specifics, and then if not, we can talk about process and ask Rodney. We have one of our authority representatives to address any questions about property impacts, and if any specifically would be impact or acquired.
So I'll start with the general picture and then maybe hand it over to Rod. And I think if you could go back to one of the earlier slides, either the kind of general overview one that has the blue and the yellow pieces on it. I don't know that I'd want to speak to every property or business that's specifically impacted by right-of-way acquisitions. But in general, if you're looking at that picture there, it's mainly those areas in yellow is what we would be looking at for permanent property acquisitions. And there's a very good resource on the Meet High Speed Rail website, which allows you to basically go in, put in an address, or see different specific coloring of properties that would be affected by the project. And maybe if Rod would like to talk to kind of the basic process that would be used for right-of-way acquisition.
Sure. You hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Rod. Go right ahead. Thank you. If you can reintroduce yourself and then just talk about the concern here.
Yeah, so my name is Rod Tavares. I'm with the Real Property Services of the High Speed Rail, which is also called right-of-way. And what right-of-way does is it is the property acquisition branch of the project. We have to follow the federal and state guidelines, which is a uniform act, and that includes the appraisal, the acquisition, and the relocation of personal property, businesses, and any property that we need for the project. And the right-of-way process is fairly simple. It looks convoluted, but it's really not. And it begins with an appraisal, a fair market value appraisal conducted by a licensed appraiser. And once that information comes in and a just compensation number is set, which is the amount of value of the property, another agent goes out and makes a first written offer. And if the property owner does not feel the offer is fair, and that offer is made on comparable listings of of like properties in the area. The authority per federal statute will actually allow the property owners to go seek their own appraisal and reimburse them up to $5,000 for doing that. And then they'll look at both appraisals and see which is better for the property owner and for the project as well. And then the acquisition phase goes forward, and then finally the relocation of the residences or the businesses takes place. That's just a real short overview of the process, the overall process.
Excellent. Thank you, Rod, for that. And there is additional information about property impacts. Obviously, the document outlines all the specifics. So please follow up if you even suggest an office appointment if you have any more specific questions about any other specific properties. I want to acknowledge that I have Ronnie Rudolph with your hand raised on screen. I see your hand, but I'm going to take a couple more of these questions that have been waiting and I'll come back to you. David Ikigami, I believe we answered your question, which was what is the anticipated construction time for the Great Separation Project? We estimated 4 years right now. Please submit another question if there was something more specific that you wanted to know, but I believe we answered your question already. So let's go back to Richard McCarthy. His question is about traffic. What is the anticipated increase in traffic on Main Street for the coming years from Route 5 to UPS? So Tyler, would that be you? And then just to give the team a heads up, we have some additional questions about the height of the bridge, especially over the park. When do we anticipate for the final document to be submitted? And then some questions about Link US. I'll leave it there for now, and then I'll review with you some additional questions. I believe we still have time to get to all of these, so let's just pace ourselves. We have about at least six more questions with about good 30 minutes remaining, so I think we're in good shape. So Tyler, would that be you to answer the question about traffic on Main Street coming from Route 5 to UPS?
I will do my best to answer it. I'm not sure I can very specifically, other than to say, and maybe Rob can, but I'll say this overall, we basically look, and I think Diane talked about this earlier, not just at the project versus today, but as the project versus expected or forecast conditions in 2040 that would happen without the project. So I'm not sure exactly what was shown for basically a difference between now and 2029 or 2040, but I can say that we did have projections to look at what we expected would happen to traffic during that time. And Rob, I don't know if you have any more info on that front, or if we just want to point to the EIR.
No, I don't have the specific answer to the question that was posed as far as what is the future growth in traffic. Of course, there's the general growth in traffic that occurs as the LA area continues to grow, but what we try and focus on in an environmental document is what is the change that the project causes. What is the amount of traffic that would be added to the local roadway system as a result of traffic, going to Union Station in this case to access high-speed rail. So we do have, not so much in terms of specific volume numbers, but in terms of how the traffic level of service, the amount of delay that occurs. That information is presented in the document in section 3.2, but as far as the specific number, that information it's not in the document.
Okay, please follow up with this if you have any other more specific questions. Next, I want to take these questions in relation to Albion Park, and then I'm going to be coming over to Mr. Rudolph to take, I see your hand raised, and also additionally one other person with their hand raised. So there's two questions actually in relation to Albion Park. The first from Michael Banner is, have shading studies been performed for any shadowing caused by the height of the new bridge, especially over Albion Park, Riverside Park? The other question in relation to Albion is from Misty. Is the new bridge for all trains, is it a new bridge for all trains, or is it for vehicle traffic? How will this impact the new Albion Park in Lincoln Heights? So who would that be to take that question or those questions?
The bridge is for the roadway, and maybe if you could go back to that overview map with the blue and the yellow in it, Anna.
Yes.
So the bridge will be for cars, trucks, pedestrian, bicycles, things like that. The trains themselves will basically be running on the existing tracks that are there now. So you can see them, the blue lines that are at ground level on the west bank of the river. And then there's also tracks on the east bank of the river, mainly freight trains right now, but also have passenger trains on them as well in the future. So we're basically keeping the trains where they are, and it's more a matter of taking the cars that cross the tracks right now at ground level and moving them up onto a newer bridge that is above the railroad tracks instead of at the same level as the tracks. And so that's what's shown in blue there. And that's basically the intent. And as I noted earlier, that does go over the corner of Albion Park there on the east bank of the river.
Rob,
and then Rob, you want to talk to, yeah.
Sure, as far as the visual analysis, so as far as shading, there would not be a lot of shading resulting from this structure, unlike a large, and this, unfortunately, this view doesn't show it really well, but unlike a building, which is a solid mass, the overcrossing structure is a bridge. There's light that will come underneath it. There would certainly be some shadow at the very southern end of the park there. In the document on chapter 3.16, page 91, there is actually a visual simulation, a rendering of what the project or what the grade separation looks like from the ground level. And from that, it shows that it's, again, a very open structure as it crosses over the rail tracks and over the river. So we did not do a detailed shade and shadow analysis like we might do if it was a 40-story office building, but is certainly something that is considered in our visual impact assessment.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Okay, I'd like to go now over to Ronnie Rudolph. I see that you have your hand raised. We'll unmute you if you can ask your question. I also recognize that we have V. Hanley with your hand raised, and we'll follow with you. We'll come back to some additional questions about process, documenting the final environmental impact report, just for the panelists as a heads up, and a question regarding equity platform, and one final question about the conceptual plan for the Main Street Bridge. So definitely a lot of interest about the design and impact or presence of the Main Street Bridge. So Mr. Rudolph, we'd like to go to you next. Thank you for joining us. If you can introduce yourself, any affiliation, and please ask us your question.
Hi, yes, my name is Ronnie Rudolph. My affiliation is San Antonio Winery and the Rebley family wines, along with a lot of surrounding real estate that's owned by us. I met with both Diane and the other gentleman on here, and we talked, and I had basically two questions. My first question is, I know that you showed where the street connects to Albion from Gibbons, basically, and then also the street coming from Maine and the new connection to Clover to Lamar. My main concern and question in regards to that is that there's four major businesses right there. Yeah, that's the perfect one. There's four major businesses that show that have essentially 18-wheelers or big rigs that come through there. One, the cement factory, two, UPS. You have Union Pacific and us, San Antonio Winery. It's already pretty difficult to make those turns on from Main Street and the straight shot down Lamar, in which all of us use. None of us really use Gibbons, Cardinal, and obviously Clover, as Clover doesn't connect. So when you're basically having to make from Main Street a left turn, then a right turn, and then a left turn again, and then the opposite direction, how will that work without widening the street? How big will the street Clover, if it will be, widened into the parking lots of both UPS and the other property? And has there been a traffic analysis of how many of those streets, not just Main Street, but also the streets that you're proposing, as obviously UPS has hundreds of trucks, Union Pacific has, probably thousands of trucks a day, along with ours, and then the cement factory. And then how do you stop people from going up Albion without just obviously basic signs, which if there's basic signs now, in general, it wouldn't stop anybody from going up and down the streets. How do we convert that log jam, regardless of the construction that's happening with the Main Street bridge? And then, how does that affect our businesses, without it being just a constant log jam? That's all I have.
That's quite a bit. Tyler, would you like to start us off? And Rob, maybe you can add anything if you would like.
Yeah, so I think the main questions I heard there: how big will Clover be in the connection there, and then how will trucks make those turns? I guess I'll say that the initial conceptual designs that we did based on what it's called truck templates that basically would ensure that the design is set so that trucks can make those turns and curves, but that will have to be developed in a lot more detail moving forward here. When it comes to the traffic analysis of truck impacts in the area, I'm wondering if, Rob, that's maybe one you can speak to based on the traffic analysis.
I'm sorry, we actually can't. That's a really granular detail that our analysis tends to focus more on both a potential delay that occurs as a result of the project, from the additional traffic that's added. Again, it's a very, very good question, but with regard to additional truck traffic, that's with regard to the change in circulation, that is probably something, or is something that is not addressed specifically, and so we would welcome that as a comment on the document.
Okay, and then for the question of kind of how do you stop trucks from going up Albion, basically we'll have to focus on design methods to do that and to channel trucks to that Clover connection that we are intending for them to take here. And we would welcome comments and questions focused on that issue so that we can define that in more detail.
Suggestions.
That's mostly.
Again, it's
Yes.
a concept and a 15% design level. So again, this is the kind of proposed situation, and but I think we can see it. And in fact, I have a couple of more questions, more interest in how the bridge is going to be designed and what it's going to look like. So you can obviously appreciate the interest from the community and just really understanding what that impact is going to be and how it's going to work. Please, again, those are excellent questions. I expect that we would get specific formal comments from you about the truck traffic and impacts to property and businesses. This is something that would be totally appropriate at this stage in the early part of design. I'd like to take next the additional person who has your hand raised, V. Hanley. I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Ms., but please go right ahead. We'll unmute you if you can introduce yourself, any affiliation, and go right ahead.
Hi, yes, my name is Valerie Hanley. I work in the area. And there was a couple of things. The proposed purple sections that you had on there are places that you're either going to acquire / demolish. So I'm kind of wondering how many businesses and how many homes are going to be affected with this process, that are going to be lost. And second, what if the people don't want to leave because some residents there have been there 30 plus years? So it's very difficult for somebody to say, I'm just going to give up my home that I've lived in most of my life and or my generations. So it's a little difficult sometimes when there's longevity here. What are going to be the answers then for those people?
Understood. Tyler, are you able to provide, or Rob?
Yeah, Hannah, I can answer the question with regard to the numbers. And then probably Rodney wants to address the concern about, what do you do when there's long-term residents or businesses that are being relocated. In section 3.12 of the document, we address both residential and business relocations. And I think it's important to note that these are displacements, and the goal is for relocation. It's not that they're just being destroyed and being put out on the street. In the city of Los Angeles, with regard to residential, And this is where we do not have a breakdown at each specific location, like at Main Street and elsewhere. But in Los Angeles, we identify one single family unit being displaced and 4 multifamily units. And with regard to businesses, in the city of Los Angeles in total, we identify a total of 25 businesses, and that's evenly spread between commercial, industrial, and retail businesses. And again, the goal would be to identify suitable locations where either these homes or businesses could be relocated. So Rodney, maybe you want to address the second part of her question?
Sure, absolutely. And, I will say that's a very good question. Purchasing property, especially a home from a family that's been there for generation after generation, is not an easy task. And that's the reason why we have to follow state and federal statute guidelines. The Uniform Act is actually written within the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, that we have to follow. And so if we do, in the rare situation that we do run into somebody that just absolutely won't sell to us, we have to make a case to the Public Works Board, which is our governing body, for what's called a resolution of necessity. And once we get that resolution, then we have the power to move forward with eminent domain so that we can acquire that property in that manner. The whole time through that whole process, we are still in complete contact and negotiation with the owners because, again, the eminent domain process, while it is in our bag of tools to use, we don't want to use it, and we try to use it very sparingly because we do understand it is very, very hard to relocate families from, a place that they've been at for 50, 75, 100 years in some places. But that's the option that we have. We are a public agency, and we do have that ability.
I think the only thing I'd note, and Rob hit on it earlier, those numbers are for the city of Los Angeles as a whole. I don't know of any residential displacements in this area. I think they're all commercial. Please get that comment though, and we'll make sure to take a look.
Very good. Thank you, Tyler. I want to, that we have a final set of questions that I think works out perfect with our remaining time. The first set of questions are process questions. So let me take them together. One is, when do you anticipate the final EIR, EIS to be submitted for public release? And then there's another question, which is, what's the next step after the EIR is complete? Once that's done, can construction commence? And around when do you think the EIR for the Burbank Union Station segment, this segment, will be finalized and adopted? So Diane, maybe would you like to just give us that top level information?
Yes, so we're anticipating that the Burbank to Los Angeles final EIR, EIS will be complete and will achieve the record of decision and notice of determination in the summer of next year. So there's a lot of work that has to happen between receiving the comments and responding to them and, refining analysis and everything that we need to do to get to this final document. As far as what happens next, Bruce, you might want to speak a little bit to that, but there are a lot. The project is only partially funded. We are funded to do these environmental studies in Southern California, but the construction right now, the funding for construction is primarily in the Central Valley. So funding has a lot to do with what will come next. Bruce, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I do, Diane. Our business plan talks about us being in valley-to-valley revenue service in 2031 and 2033 for phase one. However, that's an unconstrained plan. We don't have funding to go beyond what we're doing in valley to valley and to get a revenue service up and running from Merced to Bakersfield. So the timing is extensively dependent on funding. So when we move forward with the construction in this area for a full phase one is entirely dependent upon funding. We're moving forward with the environmental process for a variety of reasons, including having the projects be eligible for funding applications in the future.
That's why we're making plans. This planning process, having the project defined at a 15% level is so important for folks to know what we can anticipate going forward. As you can imagine, a major project like this, not only here in Southern California, but throughout the state, requires a lot of planning, a lot of funding, financing, anticipating in order to achieve a major world-class system such as this high-speed rail train. So thank you for those questions. I'd like to.
Could I add
please.
one more thing that
Please
might
go right ahead.
complete the answer to this question, and this might be a combination of Tyler and Bruce, but we're talking about 15% design. It would be helpful if we shared what phases of design come next. So when there is funding, what would the flow be?
You want me to talk to that, I guess? Typically what you then do is you go into preliminary engineering, which is around 30% of the design. And for folks' information, basically 0% is no design, 100% is ready for construction. And we're at 15% right now. Typically, once you get past 30%, then you can look to something like final design through either getting another designer on board or starting to do something like a design build procurement, which allows you to build pieces of it early. And then ultimately, you get to 100% design and can construct. That's the basic sequencing of it.
Absolutely, and to put a finer point on it, at the authority, we look for the most efficient ways to start construction and complete construction. So we look at a variety of delivery methods. As Tyler said, one might be to go design, bid, build, or another might be to go design, build. And then there are other methods that, CMGC and other project delivery methods that we will consider.
Very good. Okay, so I want to get through a few more questions here. Let's go back to the equity platform question. This is in relation to Metro's equity platform and how Metro is a partner with high-speed rail here. So the question is, Metro is collaborating with high-speed rail and is moving forward with its Link US or its Link Union Station project, while Metro has adopted an equity platform which includes define and measure, listen and learn, focus and deliver, train and grow as its principles. The question is, has high-speed rail adopted any of Metro's equity platform principles, and if not, why?
Well, and I guess I'll start with this because I work very closely with LA Metro, and the way we are moving through our environmental process is a little different. And the design, define and measure, listen and learn, I mean, we're open to learning from LA Metro, but that's just not it's not our platform. And I mean, I'm willing to learn from them, but I don't really know how to answer the why. It's the way they have done things in this equity platform, and that's their concept in train and grow and focus and deliver. What I can commit to doing is looking at exactly how they do what they do and possibly have some lessons learned from all that. But it's just not the way we're progressing through our environmental process.
Thank you, Bruce. Also, as part of that, I think a big principle of the equity platform for Metro is communications and public outreach, and I would be remiss if I didn't say the authority has certainly gone above and beyond what is legally required as a mega project like this, or any project would require at both the federal and state level. So its intention has always been to be very proactive with communications and involving the community in its decision-making prior to decisions being made. So that is, in principle, part of what Metro is doing and what the authority has had in practice. While they haven't given it that label, it has been very proactive with its outreach and communications to its audiences so that there aren't any surprises. And as we are talking now in our formal public comment period with a draft document, we are still in that decision-making process, leading toward a proposed or adopted project after going through, all of these years of review, planning, and public comment. So we certainly place a high premium on that. What I would like to now move to is to a couple more questions about the bridge itself. So there's two questions. Is the drawing of the Main Street Bridge conceptual? And if so, is the environmental document also conceptual? So maybe we need to reiterate that point. And the second question is, as a visual person, so people, can see maps and plans, but as a visual person, this person is asking, is there a model that we can view to actually see what the bridge is going to look like and how it will impact the community? So Tyler, would that be you to start?
Yeah, and I think there's one other kind of related question I saw, which is basically, is 15% kind of conceptual engineering roughly a typical level of design for an environmental document, which I think kind of dovetails with that other one. And the answer is yes. So typically you want to try to do an environmental document early in the process when you have enough detail to be able to make some initial idea of benefits and impacts of the project, but typically not too far into the process when you're late into design. So 15% is very typical. Usually it's somewhere between, I would say, 5 and 25%, something like that is a good time to, or is a good percentage of design to complete the environmental document based off of. And with the question kind of, is the environmental document conceptual? I think it is based on the assumptions that we have to base it on and on the design that we have. So we did the environmental document based on that 15% design. And as we progress down the design process, we'll be continuing to basically check to make sure that how we had conceived the project in the environmental document is still valid. And if it's not, then we will go back and update it to make sure that any of those changes are analyzed and ensured to still have the same impacts and mitigation measures that we included in our document. So this is a pretty typical process for projects like this. And that's typically the level of design that environmental document is based off of. For the question of the models, I guess I can point to two specific items in our document. One is volume 3, which is basically the design documents that were used for environmental analysis. They are mainly two-dimensional, and so in many cases they're looking at the bridge from a plan view, so kind of top-down, as well from the side, or head-on to see what it looks like from a cross-section. So that's kind of mainly 2D engineering type drawings, and that's volume 3. We also have, as I think Rob mentioned earlier, two visual simulations in the document that we basically take a ground level view, look at what it is like, say, now, before, and then look what it's like after with the project, where you see kind of the new bridge there and understand how it fits in with the community. We don't have a 3D model that can be looked at, from any angle or things like that. But I guess if that's something that you think is useful, I'd recommend that you put in a comment and we'll see what we can do.
And Tyler, I want to add on to your response to the question about the level of design. It's really important to note that throughout the document, we identify, and these are measures that the authority has developed. They're called impact avoidance and minimization features that basically recognize that as the design evolves, there's going to be more detailed information available, and for the authority to continue to work with the affected communities as far as how that design evolves. And a good example of that, we've talked a lot about the aesthetics here of the structure, of the Main Street grade separation structure and the shade and shadow and what it might look like. But for instance, there is a specific impact avoidance minimization feature, ABQ-IAMF number 2, aesthetic review process, and it requires identification of different structures and recommendings, talking about consultation with local jurisdictions on how to involve the community in the process, aesthetic compatibility treatments, and really evaluating aesthetic preferences for not only the Main Street grade separation, but the other grade separations that are proposed as part of the project. So yes, it's at an early stage of design, but as Tyler said, it's sufficient for us to evaluate it at a project level, both the plan level and the profile level that are in the engineering plans. And that enables us to complete this part of the process so the project can then advance to those more advanced stages of design.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob and Tyler. So I'd like to take advantage of our remaining time to get into additional sets of questions, which I think can be addressed and are important. First, in relation to business impacts. Negative impacts to business along North Main Street are highly likely during construction and potentially thereafter. Since Metro, so they're using Metro as, an example, is a major beneficiary on this grade separation. Metro has utilized a business interruption fund to assist small businesses. Will the authority consider its own business interruption fund? And then secondly, there are several large businesses with many employees, as we've been talking about. Have you considered any other methods to mitigate business losses? Can someone speak about the impact to businesses before we sign off here?
I'd imagine that's more of a right-of-way question because I know that the federal law allows for business goodwill and that sort of thing. So I think, Rodney, within the vein of relocation assistance, that might be something you can answer.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for that lead in. What I was going to mention is that while I can't speak for Metro, I can tell you that the High Speed Rail Authority has federal funding on the project. And because of that federal funding, we have to follow the Uniform Act. So while Metro has the Business Interruption Fund, the entire Uniform Act acts as a advocate for businesses and residential as well. And so the entire act is written for mitigating the potential losses that businesses will have, whether or not they have to relocate. Obviously, if they have to relocate to another area, there's a whole banner of things that we have to do for them. If they don't have to relocate, but they do still suffer losses, as Bruce mentioned earlier, a loss of goodwill claim can be filed. And then specific appraisers will come and take a look at that loss of goodwill and make a determination if there was a loss. Other ways to mitigate is, again, what the gentleman's talked about earlier, is keeping traffic flow to and from the business open at all times throughout the phases of construction, making sure that access is always there. So there's a lot of things that we can do, and they're all laid out in the Uniform Act.
Thank you, Rod. Final two questions here, and I think we're getting ready to wrap everything up. And it's been a very good discussion. Thank you for the diversity of questions. This question from Ms. Hanley is, will the look of the new bridge keep the historic core? It should have the look of the historic Main Street Bridge to keep a coherent look. So can someone talk about, or is it too early to talk about the proposed design of the bridge itself and have it be complementary to the historic bridge as it currently stands?
Well, first of all, that's a very good comment to submit as part of public comments. I think Tyler will probably answer this as well, but we're in 15% design, so it's preliminary to talk about that. Tyler, do you have anything to add?
Just that our design right now is pretty.
We can't hear you.
Am I off again?
I think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Our design's pretty vanilla right now. It's basically just functional, what you would need to do to build this new bridge. And I think, like Rob talked about earlier, when it comes to some of these mitigation features during the design process, we'd work closely with the community to basically settle on a design that fits within the area. So it's going to be more down the road to get to those type of aesthetic details.
And perhaps similar to the 6th Street Bridge down the way a little bit from Main Street, how that maintained the look and historic core. It'd be interesting to see the lineup of those bridges. But again, we're at a very early stage. But if that has anything to say, I think that would be considered as an advantage for this type of crossing. This is probably a good quick question, and our final question. The final EIR will be based on 50% level of engineering. Can you all be a little bit more specific about the level of engineering when we get to the final environmental document?
Yeah, so it will be. The way that we're looking at it from the case of both our design and our environmental document is based on the comments we receive from the public during this period right now. We'll update as we need to, but we're not expecting to say do a whole new level of design for this next stage. So we'll have basically an mildly updated based on comments that we've heard version of the design that is already in the draft document right now, included with our final.
Excellent.
Hannah, if I may,
Please.
just need 45 seconds. I was able to research the Metro Board archives, and I found the Executive Management Committee's Metro Equity Platform Framework information. And just to further clarify, what they use the Equity Platform Framework for is to assure that public decision-making and public investments are defined by the pillars that you mentioned. So it's a way that they make decisions using Measure M money for new long-range planning, and the define, measure, listen, learn, and focus, deliver, and train and grow. These concepts are applied to the way they use the new Measure M money for deciding which transit projects will go forward and which ones will not. So it really doesn't apply to our situation with the environmental process. However, as Hanno said, we do listen and learn and communicate as much as we can with the public. But I just felt like I needed to give a better answer to that question. So.
Thank you, Bruce. You're always on it, right on top of it. Thank you so much. So if you all will allow me just a couple more minutes, I just want to point you back again to the Meet HSR SoCal website here. Here down at the bottom are the quick links, which I encourage you to visit. Accessing the draft environmental document is very easy. Here is our description of it, and here are the links down here below. Here is the executive summary with the 8 languages listed: Spanish, Armenian, Arabic, Tagalog, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and the Mandarin Chinese. And here are volumes 1, 2, and 3. If you click on that, it goes straight to the authority's website where the documents are housed. If you just go all the way to the bottom here, you see the links that take you directly to volumes 1, 2, and 3. Our team has been referencing those documents throughout our meeting today. If you click on that, you'll see a lot of the sections that they have been referencing. If you click on any one of them, it turns it into a PDF that is downloadable or viewable on your screen. So we really encourage you to look at all of them. There's quite a lot of information, however, which is why I really point you at a minimum to this executive summary. The English version is 74 pages and gives you a very good overview of the entire document and might be where you would start. And just, hop into the various sections as you can see here on the screen, and do research a little bit more that way. The comment form is again available on the website. So this is how we would encourage you to submit your comment. It's specifically station 6 here, but the links are all over the website. So please just click on the link, go straight to the form. It is available again in the multiple languages, and we very much encourage you to comment this way or any way that you feel is appropriate for you or available to you. I'll review those again before we sign off. Let me just go back to our presentation here. There are 4 different ways for you to comment on the project. Either by mail, through the authority's website, by email, or by voicemail. Again, we are presenting this here tonight to encourage your participation and to please do so by the deadline this coming Monday, August 31st. It's important to give a beginning point and an end point to these formal documents so that we make sure that we address what people are formally requesting us to do on a very important document like this. Again, as the panel has indicated to you, it is a draft document and it's a part of the process for us to address your comments directly in order to lead into potentially a final project. that could be modified based off of comments, and ultimately will be presented to the Board of Directors for their consideration and adoption. Again, funding would still need to be identified to move forward to the next phases, but this is part of the process that the authority is committed to doing with you, and of course is legally required. But to get to a good project, much of this public comment and your participation is essential in order to lead to good decision making. So again, on behalf of our panel, the authority, we thank you so much for listening with us tonight, participating with us. Again, get us in your comments, and we thank you again for sharing. One more thing, I would like to give thanks to the entire team that you see on camera and behind the scenes. They've worked really hard to put together this session for you today. So thank you to everybody, and everyone, please have a good, safe evening. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.